So one of the things we wanted to do in this new series, Babylon, Satan's Seat of Power, is sit down with staff members of the ministry and just kind of talk about our past, talk about how worldliness affected us and how it, kind of fueled sin in our lives.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been behind the scenes and, helping with some of the filmings that Pastor Steve has been doing. And one of the things he talks about is that worldliness is not just like, when I think of worldliness, or if you would have said that before I came into the program, I would have thought of like, TV, like social media or things like that. But one of the things he says is it's more of a corporate consciousness. It's more of a mindset of the world
Mm-hmm.
trying to unify people against God, and how things like television, things like movies, things like music or social media pull us into that is kind of what we want to talk about here today, and how that came into our lives. So thank you guys, first of all, for coming down here and being willing to talk.
Yeah.
And so to start off, like, what were some of the worldly influences that you guys saw in your own lives, and what drew you to those things? Either one of you can start.
I can go ahead. So for me, I didn't grow up Christian. My folks were just like, if you want to go to church, go. But I'm like 8 years old, don't have a car. How am I going to get to church? So I didn't go.
Yeah.
And, 16 years old, a bunch of stuff happens. Get to a place where I encounter a knowledge of God, and I'm like, I want that. I don't want to go to hell. And he sounds really great. So I'm going to just stick him on top of my already worldly, unchanging life and just go forward. And so it was always washing back and forth. Couldn't get out of it. And in a way, I just didn't want to. I wanted to keep those things. It just reminds me of the rich young ruler. He went away sad because he had great wealth. I had a whole bunch. I didn't have much, but I had a whole bunch of heart things. I had a whole bunch of heart wealth in the world. And I just didn't want to give that up. And so
What were some of those things like for you?
It was almost always music, metal and the dark rap. And I just wanted to stay there. I was thinking about it several months ago, and up until challenged here at Pure Life in the program, there was always something that was I like that darkness. I just liked, I liked the darker feel of things.
Yep.
Movie, all of it. I didn't really care what it was. If it had a dark tint to it, if the bad guy had a chance of winning, I was down. I wanted it. But I said I was Christian, so it's cheering for the devil in that way. It's insane, but it's where I was at. And I just,
Wow. Yeah, I think for me, one of the biggest things that I got into worldly wise was books. And I just loved to read. It was a good thing in many ways, but in a lot of ways, that's how I would escape reality. That's what drew me to books, is I could escape conviction, escape everything that was unpleasant in my life, and just have my own fantasy world. And that really, really, that deadened me to the Holy Spirit in a big way. So kind of in the same way with you, Kyle, it's even though kind of from a different angle, being drawn into that, just fascinated with something that isn't real.
And just I don't think, you talk about, rap music and the darker things, like heavy metal, these horror movies and things like that. People would associate that and be like, oh yeah, that's a bad thing. You shouldn't probably be watching that. You shouldn't probably be listening to those things. But reading books, it's okay, he reads a book. That's not that big of a deal, but it took you out of the reality of life. That was your escape. That was the way that the world could take your, the reality of this life and just kind of, take you away from that and blind you to it.
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest ways that the enemy used that to really deaden me to spiritual realities was just being in control of what I wanted to be in. So I could pick the genre of book that I wanted to read. Whether it was a Western or, I don't know. There's just, I read a lot of stuff. I really have liked war history and even just real stories of people. And I would just lose myself in those kinds of things, just lose myself. And it was a very deadening kind of influence in my life that after a while, spiritual realities become so foreign and far away. My heart was just like dull, very dull. And it produced that like lethargy in me that just like, I'm not even really that interested in God for real.
Just like you, one of my influences was rap music. That was the first one that got me. When I was about 12 years old, I remember seeing my first rap music video. And the womanizing of women, just the way they would like degrade women to the place that they were more of a possession, something that you had, and they were there to please you. And then you see the rapper driving in with a, big Cadillac Escalade with these nice, he had money, he had wealth. He looked like he was doing very, very well. And so you get that pull, and at the same time being in church, but the church to me wasn't going after anything different. There was still the desire for wealth. There was still the desire for possessions. There was still the desire for things that I saw as like, what people wanted. If you're sick, then you want to be healed. You pray for healing. You want your finances to be blessed, then you tithe more. You want, if you're not doing well, then maybe you need to start tithing. Like it seemed like the goal in the end was always the same, which was prosperity and health and wealth and feeling good and having that dream life that the same thing the rappers wanted, the same thing the music industry wanted. And so for me, I think the entertainment industry showed me more of what my flesh wanted without like Christianity to me was just like, well, they go after the same thing, but the entertainment industry, the rap, the music and all that, they're going after it, but they get to do what they want. I wanted that sinful lifestyle. I wanted that lifestyle where I didn't have to be controlled by, what Christians didn't do. Still being a good kid, I didn't curse around my parents or stuff like that, or I didn't, they didn't know about a lot of the stuff that I did. But when I went to school, just blended in with everybody else. But the more that you would, at least for me, the more that I saw that industry, cursing, anger, lusting after a woman, flirting with a woman, flirting with, anybody like that didn't seem like a big deal because that's what the rappers did. That's what the musicians did. That's what the actors did. They always had the beautiful girl. They always had, the nice car. They always had these things. And so, well, their life was going pretty well, and that's what everybody does. So it minimized that sin of lust, that sin of anger. It just kind of like made it didn't look that bad,
right?
Because everybody was doing it. And then you go to school, and that culture that I'm in school, that's what everybody's doing. They're all emulating the rappers. They're all emulating the music industry. They're all emulating the people that are in the superstars. That's what they're all emulating. And it gives you this mindset of, well, they're doing it, so it's okay that we do it. But then when you go home, it's just, well, I'm in a Christian home, so I can't do that stuff while I'm here. But if I go to my buddy's home and he's not a Christian, we can do whatever we want. And so that it minimized like the choices I made. It was like, as long as I wasn't doing it at home and I wasn't getting in trouble for it, the doors were wide open. You could pretty much do whatever you wanted to.
So it was almost like that familiarity was just kind of breeding that mindset in you. Like the more that you got involved in it, it was like, oh, this is kind of more and more just like, okay, that's okay. We can do this, we can do that. It's not really that bad. That's kind of how it was like with this whole fantasy world that I came up with. I mean, just basically what I mean when I say that is just an ability to imagine myself in any situation I wanted to be in, given any time, given any desire that I had. So, like, yeah, just, I mean, part of this is like, I always feel like my life is so boring. There's nothing good or exciting that happens. So I'm like, these exciting different things that happen to people, like it has a pull for me.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like how I could get into those kinds of situations, is by doing it vicariously through these people these stories that I was living in. So just like constantly living in that desire to be outside of my normal, boring sphere of life, just familiarized me more and more with this fantasy world. Like I can fantasize about living immorally. I can fantasize about this girl. Like, it's not that bad. Like, this is just like a little bit on this side of this other fantasy world that I'm living in. It's not that bad. So that's kind of like, I'm seeing that a little bit the same way that you did. Like, it's kind of starting to gray the lines a little bit more and more.
Yeah. Yeah. And really the people, at least in my view, the people who were the most, like, I don't know, like constrained, or the people like were the Christians. Like, they were the ones that, like, I don't want to say missing out, but it's almost like,
that's what it felt like, though.
Yeah. You're looking at their lives, especially personally, we grew up in a trailer park type, and so it's like, okay, here you have all these people, rich and famous, and they got everything they want. And then we're struggling.
Yep.
We're struggling over here. And it's like, I don't want to live that life.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned when you were at home doing the Christian thing, and then when you're at your buddy's house who's not Christian, like, all right, all bets are off. And that immediately prompted me back to in high school. I'd be with my friends and it'd just be downhill. Like all of the stereotypical things, like prescription drugs, drinking, the whole deal. Come back to my folks' home, not Christian, but still like good people, cut it all out. They never came over. Like I did everything I could to keep all of that segregated. So I had, like, that was the mentality I brought into, church life as an adult. I'm at home, end up getting married, having a couple kids. Like, all right, here, everything's square.
Yep.
Ain't doing none of the things. I'm going to go out. Whatever happens, happens. Like, I'm at work and I've got people like, they know I'm a Christian, but then they hear I struggle with pornography. They hear the way I talk about some other women that we work with, and they're just like, so what's up? And I'm like, well, I mean, I can struggle like everybody else, like, how can I smooth this over? And man, like, that's where it all started to, like, just go. Because I'm smearing the lines. Like, they're not getting smeared. Like, I'm trying to smear them. I'm trying to cover, and how do I do this and that, and how do I start to balance? And all of a sudden I've got 16 plates spinning in the air, but like that one that I want, that one stays spinning. A couple of them fall and I pick them back up and get back going. But there's that one, like, that I wanted the whole way through. Never once. I kept that thing going. And it wasn't God. Like, that one plate wasn't a fair. Like, everything in my sexual sin just focused around that. Everything went back to that spot. And I always had this thought, like, God wouldn't let me do it because it's wrong, which was true up until 2019 when everything came apart. He just finally was like, here you go.
Yeah.
And like, I just kept going. Like, that was the one thing I kept spinning, like, amongst all the lines, just kept going and kept going.
What was it that finally made that okay? Like, what,
it was the subtleness of it.
Yeah.
Because who it was with was a friend, like a family friend. Like, our families were close.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, like spirits, she's close, we're close. One or two warnings. Hey, kind of be careful over there because there's something fishy. Yeah, okay, cool. But back of my mind, green light. Okay, maybe. Okay, maybe. Nah, not that line. Nah, not. All of a sudden, it's April. I'm just living in a friend's apartment, like, focused on how can I destroy two families just to get this one thing. Like, it just got so blurred and so connived. And I did not wake up.
Yeah.
Like, it was all just, how can I make this work? How can I built myself into the system. I was the system. The system was me. We were going this way. Like there was no difference
Yeah.
between me and that mindset. You know, where it's like, yeah, you know, because you see it on television, or I think even Pastor Steve points it out in SI, where like there's a marriage and the guy's a jerk and the woman's just like trying to make it, and this other guy shows interest, and now you're cheering for an affair. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like I remember reading that in SI and being like, yep, you're darn right. That's exactly what it is, because that's exactly what I sprinted to. Like I just ran to it.
Yeah. And that, it wasn't that it was just like, that's what Kyle desired. And that's what, because it was what you desired, you know, all that stuff. That's what we desired. But the main thrust of it is the world was saying, like, that's okay. You know, the world, like, you know, all the things you're watching, the subtle message coming out is, Kyle, you can have what you want. It's okay. You can go after that. It's okay. They do it on TV. You know, everything's fine. And then normally they fall in love and they get together, and she realized, oh, that's right. I loved you more than I love that guy. Yay, everything's fine. And then the movie ends and you're like, oh, that's so sweet. When in reality, like, we don't, again, that's the world blinding us to the seriousness of what's really happening. Is you're devastating this other family. You're devastating that other family, but we don't see that, and the world doesn't want us to see that.
Yeah.
The enemy doesn't want us to see that at all.
Yeah, no.
And on top of that, even, I'm just thinking about what Pastor Steve was saying about how that Babylon is like a unified, what is it, a consciousness?
A corporate consciousness.
Corporate consciousness, yeah, that's unified against God, or in rebellion against God.
Yeah.
Man, that's exactly what that sounds like. Is like, yeah, not only are we destroying whatever relationships and good things in our lives, but somehow it's popular and a good thing and a attractive thing to do this, to be in rebellion against God's laws, like to be in lust, to be in adultery, to be in whatever we want to chase after, that is a direct affront to God's character.
Yeah.
That's certainly, yeah, man, wow. That's just crazy how we can so dumb things down and so blur the lines that it's like, oh, it's not a big deal.
Yeah. And when in reality, the train wreck we're leaving behind, we don't find out until God in his mercy has to show us.
Yeah.
This is what's really happening. And this is, I know that was for me, like I mean, I was so striving after that in the entertainment industry that I was like, if I can just make it, if I can just get the dream job, if I can just marry the dream girl, and then if I can just get this, then I'll be happy. I'll be satisfied. I'll be good to go. And so that's what it always became. It always became, okay, all right, I get fired from this job. Okay, don't need to repent. No problemo. We're going for this thing. I get kicked out of college for, sexual relationship. Okay, fine. We're not going to repent. We're going to move on because what I'm missing is I'm missing this. I'm missing my dream job. I'm missing the opportunity of a lifetime, Okay, I messed up over here, but I still have this opportunity over here. This door is still open. And so, but what I'm not seeing the whole time is the devastation of that girl in college, how much I'm shutting out my family and not giving them a lick of consideration. I wasn't seeing it, and I didn't care because what the world was, and what my flesh was telling me and was agreeing with the world was, you can have what you want, and this is what you really want. And the other people are just a stumbling block to you getting what you really desire. They're just, they can do their life over here, but you do your life over there. Yeah. And what you do doesn't really affect their life over there. Yeah.
It's remarkable how much numbness and how dull it really, that kind of a lifestyle. I mean, because like all three of us here were in that. I certainly was. And how it just desensitizes us to these kinds of things. And I don't think I ever, that even crossed my mind before coming to Pure Life about, this is going to be detrimental to other people, detrimental to my own. This was just something that Like at the beginning, it seems so innocuous. Like, what in the world is wrong with reading a book? Just you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's just slowly, a little bit over time. I did things that I never imagined I ever would. I thought things that I never thought I would ever. That line was a complete line I was not willing to cross. But because I continued to foster this in my life, it continued to just draw me further and further and further.
Yeah.
It's terrifying.
Yeah.
But I'm so thankful for what the Lord has done and showing, man, there is a life to be had outside of this.
Yeah.
And for me in the program, that really began to switch when suddenly I had no access to any of these things.
Yeah.
Man, that was something that was completely new for me. Just a set apart atmosphere, a set apart time to just seek the Lord. I started seeing things I had never seen before.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I'm reflecting, and it's very true how it's when, because I think of, for me, I saw the impact of what I was doing and how it affected other people, immediately at the end of May when it all just exploded. Everything came out. Everything was out. Everything. Everybody knew everything. Everybody knew the text. Everybody knew everything. But you're spot on. Just being exposed, just being out in the light. It was just I woke up and I was oh my! I was in the middle, and I just looked. I was shocked at who I was. I was like you had mentioned, I had gone through all these lines, and I'm like, what in the world? But then, for me, what sent me into a lot of fear when I first got into the program was that, okay, I know everything's cut off. I have no access anymore. But I had already run into that problem back when I was 16, 13 years earlier, because I got expelled from school, all my drugs and alcohol were cut off. I've not gone back to them since, praise God. But I was like, well, it's just because you're cut off. That lie just snuck right in, first week in the LAS. It's just because you're cut off. 9 months, you'll be out, right back in. And then I go through the program. I do my 2-month extension. I go visit the kids for the first time over Christmas, New Year's, one of the two. And that was the first thing I was terrified of. I went straight to my counselor and was just like, look, I'm going to go see the kids, but I've been cut off. I'm going to go out there and things are going to be there. And I'm like, I don't know how this is going to go. And he was just like, did the Lord do a work in your life or not, Kyle? Did he change you or not? And I was like, I'm going to choose to believe that. And he keeps you, man.
Yeah.
It's so great. That cutting off is so needed because just what we've been saying, we've got to see him. But it's like Paul says somewhere, when we see him, we're like him. Yeah. Paul, John, one of the New Testament letters.
Yeah. So then we're now, us as staff members now are living a life separated from the world. What have been some of the benefits of separating yourself from the world?
Yeah, for me, I've really seen this, especially coming out of that fantasy world, that fantasy life that I just lived, how that has given me the ability to focus on God, the ability to see the Lord, and to take even pleasure and delight in His presence. Being separated from that has given me a new capacity to enjoy the Lord, to love the Lord, because we're such fickle beings. There's only one thing that we can love. There's just one thing. I mean, Jesus told us that you will either serve one or the other, one master or the other, and I can't be loving the world and loving God at the same time. So having my heart been purified and still being purified from that has given me a new desire even for the things of God, a desire to be in the Word and in prayer, a desire to pour my life out, and has cleared away. I mean, it's like you become intoxicated, you come just polluted with the world to the extent that the things of God just are like, meh, I don't really feel like seeking the Lord. But that's it has increased my hunger for God.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the biggest things for me that I'm grateful for. That's really just huge for me. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. Like, just, you mentioned, like, what stood out to me when you said that is like to see him.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been reflecting on that the last few mornings. Like, man, just to see Jesus, like just to have that veil all the way back. But I would have never cared.
Yeah.
I never cared. But now I'm like, I want that veil back so bad. Like, just to look him dead in the eyes one time for as long as a fickle human can do so. Like, just to be able to do that. And then for me, you mentioned earlier, Austin, like the thoughts. When I came here, I couldn't think straight. Like, we would have the week-long talk fasts.
Mm-hmm.
I hated those. Hated them so much because no one else is saying anything. No one else is distracting me from me. It's just me just spinning around. Oh my gosh. It was horrible. I felt there was one over the winter where I felt like I was going nuts. Like, I was in the shower and all I could think is, I just want to put my head through this wall. I can't but I think so clearly now.
Yeah.
It's not awful anymore. Like, it's that cleanliness. It's that cleaning internally.
Yeah.
Like, he has cleaned out my skull and it feels so wonderful.
Wow, that's amazing.
I know for me, gratitude is what I have now that I didn't have when I was in the world. It was always a push for something more. I was never satisfied. And to realize, at least for me, that I can be content with what the Lord's given me.
Yeah.
And I'm satisfied in it. And I'm satisfied in having him. That's what's different. The world, getting that worldliness out of my life has helped me to be grateful, to see the Lord, and then also to see other people.
Mm-hmm.
To be able to look at you guys, to be able to look at Kyle and Austin and be concerned for them. How are they doing? When before it's just like, well, I don't care.
Right.
Because they're kind of just a speed bump in my way,
Right.
When now it's more like, I really want to know how those people are doing, It's just, there's just more peace in that life than the life that I had before.
Yeah, so much more peace. I have more peace and more fulfillment now than I ever had after, years of trying to pursue my own way. Now giving all of that up and living a simple life like we do here now there's so much rest in that.
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for it.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I'm really thankful that we were actually able to sit down and talk about this. I really hope this
Yeah.
is a blessing for a lot of people. So thank you guys.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you're welcome.